The gunshot echoed through the emergency room before Clara Bennett even saw the blood. She spun around, heart hammering against her ribs, as the automatic doors burst open with a violence that made everyone freeze. 3 men in black suits dragged a fourth between them, his white shirt soaked crimson, his face pale as death itself. But his eyes, God, his eyes were the most vivid green she'd ever seen, blazing with fury and something else, something darker, even as his body sagged between his companions. "We need a doctor, now." The man on the left, sharp jaw, cold stare, built like he could break bones with his bare hands, wasn't asking. He was commanding. Clara's supervisor, Margaret, stepped forward with her hands raised in that placating gesture she used with difficult patience. "Sir, you need to wait in the triage area. We have protocols." The green-eyed man lifted his head slightly, blood dripping from his mouth. One word, barely a whisper but somehow louder than a scream. "Her." He was looking directly at Clara, through Clara, into Clara. "I'm just a nurse," Clara said, proud that her voice came out steadier than her hands felt. "You need a surgeon. We have doctors who—" "You." His accent was thick, Italian maybe, rolling the single syllable like a threat and a prayer combined. More blood dripped onto the pristine linoleum, spreading in a pool that looked black under the fluorescent lights. "No one else, only you." Margaret grabbed Clara's arm hard enough to bruise, pulling her back. Her voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Don't! Clara, I know who these men are, I know that symbol." She was staring at something on the injured man's wrist, a tattoo, a wolf's head surrounded by thorns, done in stark black ink. "If you help them, you're crossing a line you can't uncross." But Clara was already moving. She'd lost her sister Lily 18 months ago because no one acted fast enough in a hospital just like this one. She'd held Lily's hand and watched the monitors flatline while doctors debated, and protocols were followed, and precious seconds ticked away. She wouldn't watch another person bleed out on a cold floor, no matter who they were or what darkness followed them. She pointed to Trauma Room 3 with a hand that only shook a little. "Get him in there. Now, move." The men moved like shadows given form, like violence contained in expensive fabric. As they laid him on the gurney with surprising gentleness, Clara caught sight of that tattoo again, the wolf's head seeming to snarl at her. Her blood went cold despite the hot adrenaline flooding her system. She'd grown up on the south side of Chicago. She knew that symbol. Everyone knew that symbol. Dominic Valenti, head of the Valenti crime family. The man the newspapers called the Wolf of Chicago. The man responsible for controlling half the city's underground, for bodies that disappeared into Lake Michigan, for an empire built on blood and fear and absolute loyalty. "Everyone out," Clara ordered, snapping on gloves with movements made automatic by years of practice. "Except you." She pointed to the sharp-jawed man who'd spoken first. "You stay and keep your hands where I can see them at all times." Dominic's eyes flickered with something that might have been amusement under different circumstances. "Luca stays, he's family." Clara cut away the blood-soaked shirt with scissors that felt too small, too inadequate for what she was seeing. Knife wound, deep, just below the ribs on the left side. Clean-cut professional. This wasn't a random attack or a bar fight gone wrong. Someone had tried to kill him with precision, with skill, and they'd almost succeeded. Another inch to the right and the blade would have found his heart. "This needs surgery," she said, hands already moving to assess the damage, to stop the bleeding. "You need a hospital with an operating room with proper equipment. I can't." "No hospitals." Dominic's hand shot out faster than a dying man should be able to move, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. His skin was hot with fever, but his grip was iron. "No records, no questions, no police. You fix this. Here, now." "That's impossible. I don't have the equipment, the anesthesia." "Nothing's impossible, Clara Bennett." His eyes locked onto hers, and she felt stripped bare under that gaze, like he could see every secret she'd ever kept. "That's your name, isn't it? Clara Marie Bennett, 28 years old, student debt of $60,000, lives alone on Archer Avenue in a one-bedroom apartment with a broken heater." He smiled, and there was blood on his teeth, making the expression macabre. "I know everything about you. Your coffee order at the cafe on 5th Street. The fact that you work double shifts on Thursdays. The name of your dead sister. And after tonight, you'll know everything about me." Clara's hands moved on autopilot while her mind reeled. She irrigated the wound, her fingers steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. She sutured layer by layer, praying the blade hadn't nicked anything vital, that infection wouldn't set in, that she wasn't about to watch this dangerous man die under her hands. Dominic never made a sound, even when she stitched without proper anesthesia, even when she had to probe the wound to check for internal damage. His jaw clenched, muscles standing out in his neck, but he didn't scream. Luca watched her like a hawk tracking a mouse, his hand resting on something inside his jacket, something gun-shaped, something lethal. "Why me?" Clara finally asked as she tied off the last suture. Her hands were covered in his blood, her scrubs ruined. "Why specifically me?" "You have honest eyes." Dominic's voice was softer now, weaker, the adrenaline and shock finally catching up to him. "Everyone else in this hospital would have called the cops the second they recognized me. You just worked. You just tried to save a life, even knowing what I am." His hand found hers again, this time gentle, almost reverent. "You lost someone, recently. I can see it in the way you move, like you're carrying a weight no one else can see." Clara's throat tightened, tears threatening for the first time in months. "My sister, Lily, car accident 18 months ago." "Then you understand." His eyes drifted closed, exhaustion finally winning. "You understand what it means, loss, loyalty, the things we do for family, the lines we cross, the prices we pay." She finished bandaging the wound as his breathing steadied into something approaching sleep. Luca stepped forward immediately, pulling out an envelope from inside his jacket. It was thick, obscenely thick, stuffed with cash. $20,000, for your discretion and your skill. Clara stared at the money like it was a snake. $20,000 would pay off a third of her crushing student debt. Would mean she could stop working doubles, could sleep more than 4 hours a night, could maybe have a life beyond survival. But taking it meant crossing that line Margaret had warned her about. Taking it meant becoming complicit in whatever darkness these men carried with them. "I can't take that. I have a code of ethics." "You already crossed the line the moment you touched him." Luca placed a burner phone beside the money, the cheap plastic looking out of place next to the expensive bills. "He'll need follow-up care, wound checks, bandage changes, antibiotics. When we call this number, you come, no questions, no delays, no excuses." "And if I refuse?" Clara met his cold stare with one of her own. "What if I go to the police right now and tell them everything?" Luca's expression didn't change, didn't flicker, and somehow that was more terrifying than any threat could have been. "Then we'll be very disappointed, Miss Bennett. And I promise you, you don't want to disappoint the Valenti family. We have long memories and longer reach. There's nowhere you could run that we wouldn't find you. No one you could tell who we couldn't silence." They were gone before security made their rounds, disappearing like they'd never been there at all. They left only blood on the floor, impossible to clean completely, and an envelope that felt like a bomb in Clara's shaking hands. 3 days of silence followed. 3 days where Clara convinced herself it was over, just a strange and terrifying blip in her otherwise ordinary life. She worked her shifts at the hospital, avoided Margaret's pointed questions and worried looks, and tried not to think about green eyes and wolf tattoos, and the way Dominic had looked at her like she was something precious and breakable. Then, at 2:47 in the morning on Thursday, the burner phone screamed to life. Clara jolted awake, heart already racing, fumbling for the phone in the darkness of her bedroom. "Hello." "He's dying." Luca's voice was tight with barely controlled panic, with something that might have been fear in a man who probably never felt fear. "Fever's at 104. The wound's infected. You come now or he dies. And if he dies, Clara, you die with him. Those are his orders." "Call 911. Get him to a hospital." "There's a black SUV outside your building right now. Engine running. You have 2 minutes to get in it or I come up and get you myself. Your choice." Clara ran to her window, pulled back the curtain with shaking fingers. A black SUV idled at the curb, exhaust visible in the cold night air, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. As she watched, the driver's door opened and Luca stepped out, looking up at her window. He pointed at his watch. I'm not going anywhere without. The Marchetti family knows you treated him. Luca's voice cut through her protest like a knife. They have people watching your building, watching the hospital, watching everywhere you go. They know you're his weak spot now. You're safer with us than you are alone. 1 minute 30 seconds, Clara. The line went dead. Clara looked around her tiny apartment, the life she'd built from grief and student loans and endless shifts. The framed photo of her and Lily at Navy Pier, both of them laughing, both of them alive. The nursing textbook stacked on her coffee table. The sad little Christmas tree she'd put up and never decorated. Safe, predictable, empty. She grabbed her medical bag and ran. The estate sprawled across the lakefront like something out of a movie, like something that shouldn't exist in the real world. High walls topped with cameras, armed guards at every entrance, manicured grounds that probably cost more to maintain than Clara made in a year. The SUV drove through gates that opened automatically, past men with guns who nodded at Luca with respect that bordered on fear. A severe older woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes met them at the massive front doors. "You're the nurse, Nina Romano. I run the household. Follow me, quickly." She led Clara through hallways lined with art that belonged in museums, past rooms bigger than Clara's entire apartment, up a grand staircase with banisters that gleamed, down another hallway, third door on the left. "He's in there. He's been asking for you. Hurry." Dominic's bedroom was enormous, and he was dying. His skin burned under Clara's touch when she pressed her fingers to his neck to check his pulse. Fever-bright eyes unfocused, unseeing. The wound had turned angry red, infection spreading in dark tendrils up his torso like poison ivy. His breathing was labored, rattling in his chest. Sepsis, blood infection. He had hours at most if she didn't act immediately. "I need IV antibiotics, fluids, sterile equipment, fever reducers." Clara was already mentally cataloging everything required, knowing it was impossible, knowing she was watching him die. "Already here." Nina gestured to a table loaded with medical supplies that would have made a small hospital jealous. IV poles, bags of fluids, antibiotics in neat rows, everything Clara could possibly need. "We anticipated your requirements. Money opens many doors, Miss Bennett." Clara worked through the night like she was possessed, fighting death with every tool she had. She started 2 IV lines, pushed antibiotics and fluids, cleaned and redressed the wound which was worse than she'd feared. Dominic thrashed in delirium, muttering in Italian, names, threats, apologies that sounded like prayers. Once he grabbed her hand so hard it hurt and whispered, "Mia, I'm sorry, so sorry. I couldn't save you." "Who's Mia?" Clara asked Nina while changing his IV bag, her hands moving with practiced efficiency, even as exhaustion pulled at her. Nina's expression softened in a way that transformed her severe face. His sister, his baby sister. She was 16 when the Marchetti family murdered her, killed her to send Dominic a message, to punish him for expanding into their territory. He was holding her when she died, covered in her blood, and he hasn't been the same since. That was 20 years ago. Clara's hands trembled. She thought of Lily, of holding her sister's hand in the ICU, watching the monitors flatline while doctors spoke in calm voices about brain death and organ donation. What happened to the people who killed her? Dominic spent 2 decades hunting every single person involved. The shooter, the getaway driver, the man who gave the order. All of them died slowly, painfully. He made sure they understood why they were dying, made sure they begged for mercy he never gave. Nina's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. "This war with the Marchetti family, it's been going on for 20 years. All because of a girl who loved flowers and terrible pop music, and her older brother more than anything in the world." By dawn, the fever finally broke. Dominic's eyes opened, clear now, focused, finding Clara immediately. She was slumped in an overstuffed chair she'd pulled up beside his bed, exhausted but still keeping watch, still monitoring his vitals every 15 minutes. "You stayed." His voice was hoarse, raw. "You would have died if I left." Most people would consider that a favor to the world, ridding Chicago of its biggest monster. He tried to sit up, winced, and Clara was there immediately, adjusting pillows, checking his bandage. Why save me, Clara? Why risk everything for a man you don't know, a man whose name makes people cross the street? She met his gaze steadily. I don't see a monster. I see someone who loved his sister as much as I loved mine. I see someone who knows what it's like to fail the person you were supposed to protect. Something shifted in Dominic's expression, a crack in the armor, a glimpse of the man beneath the legend. Lily Bennett, 23 years old, died in a car accident on Interstate 55. Drunk driver crossed the median, hit her head-on. He walked away without a scratch while your sister bled out waiting for an ambulance that took 45 minutes to arrive. Clara's breath caught in her chest. How do you know the details? That wasn't in the news reports. I told you, I know everything. He reached out, his fingertips brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness. Including the fact that you haven't cried for her. Not once since the funeral. You just work, you survive, you exist. But you don't live, Clara. You're a ghost haunting your own life. Tears burned behind her eyes for the first time in 18 months, threatening to fall. I can't cry. If I start, I won't stop. If I let myself feel it, the grief will swallow me whole and I'll never come back. Then don't stop. His hand cupped her face, his thumb catching the first tear that finally fell. Cry, scream, break into 1,000 pieces. I'll hold every single one until you're ready to be whole again. So Clara cried. She cried for Lily, for all the conversations they'd never have, for the future that had been stolen. She cried for the loneliness that ate at her every single day. She cried for the version of herself that had died in that hospital room alongside her sister. And through it all, Dominic held her, this dangerous man with blood on his hands and gentleness in his touch, and didn't let go. Clara stayed at the estate for 2 more days, monitoring Dominic's recovery, slowly getting to know the people in his orbit. Nina, who'd been his nanny as a child and now ran his household with iron discipline. Luca, his second-in-command and childhood friend, who'd taken a bullet for Dominic 3 times. The guards, the staff, all of them fiercely loyal in a way Clara had never witnessed before. On the morning of the 3rd day, she found Luca waiting in the hallway outside Dominic's room, his face grim. We need to talk, now. He led her to a study lined with monitors showing various locations throughout Chicago. On the screens, her apartment building from multiple angles, the hospital where she worked, her favorite coffee shop on 5th Street, the grocery store she went to every Sunday, all under surveillance, all being watched. This is insane, Clara started. This is survival. Luca pulled up another screen, this one showing photos of Clara, leaving her apartment, walking to work, buying groceries, getting coffee, all time-stamped over the last week. The Marchetti family has been tracking you since the night you treated Dom. You're leverage now, you're bait. You're a way to get to him, to hurt him, to finish what they started with that knife. Clara's legs went weak. She grabbed the desk for support. So you're keeping me prisoner here, that's what this is. We're keeping you alive. That's the same thing. No, Dominic's voice came from the doorway. He looked stronger now, dressed in black slacks and a fitted shirt that showed the bandage beneath. He moved carefully but steadily, his color better, his eyes clear. A prisoner has no choice. You do, Clara. You always have a choice. He crossed to her, and God help her, Clara didn't step back, didn't retreat. I can relocate you, Dominic said softly, his voice intimate despite Luca's presence. New city, new identity, new life. I have people who specialize in making people disappear. You'll be safe. You'll have enough money to never work again if you don't want to. You'll never see me again, never have to worry about my world touching yours. And the other option. You stay here with me, in this world of blood and bullets and impossible choices. In this life where every day might be your last, where you'll see things that will give you nightmares, where you'll have to make decisions that will haunt you. His jaw tightened. But you'll be alive, Clara, really alive, not just existing, not just going through the motions waiting to die. Why would I stay? But even as Clara asked, she knew the answer. Knew it in the way her heart raced when he looked at her, in the way she felt more awake in his presence than she had in 18 months. Because you're tired of being safe. Because safe hasn't made you happy, it's just made you numb. Because when you look at me, you don't see a monster. You see someone who understands what it's like to lose everything that matters and keep breathing anyway. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Because I think you're falling for me the same way I'm falling for you, and that terrifies us both. Clara's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. You're asking me to give up my entire life, everything I've worked for. I'm asking you to start living again, instead of just surviving. The words hit her like a physical blow because they were true. Every word was true. Before Clara could answer, before she could voice the yes that was building in her throat, alarms shrieked through the estate, so loud they made her ears ring. Breach, Lucas shouted, already moving, already pulling a gun from somewhere. East wall, multiple contacts, Marchetti's men, 15, maybe 20, heavily armed. Gunfire erupted outside, so close it rattled the windows. Glass shattered somewhere in the house. Someone screamed. Dominic grabbed Clara, pulling her behind his desk as the study windows exploded inward in a shower of glittering shards. Nina appeared in the doorway, gun in hand, dragging Clara toward a panel in the wall that Clara hadn't noticed before. Panic room, now move. What about Dominic? Clara struggled against Nina's iron grip. I'll be fine. Dominic pressed something into Clara's hand, a key card, heavy and cold. If I don't come back, this opens the safe in the bedroom. Everything you need to disappear is in there. Money, documents, contacts. Go, live the life Lily didn't get to live. Their eyes met for one searing moment that felt like a lifetime. Then Nina pulled Clara through the panel, and steel doors slammed shut with a finality that made Clara's chest ache. The panic room had monitors showing every angle of the estate in crystal clarity. Clara watched, helpless and horrified, as Dominic and his men fought with brutal efficiency. Dominic moved like death itself, precise, lethal, unstoppable despite his recent injury. He took down 3 men in the time it took Clara's heart to beat twice, but there were so many attackers, too many, and they kept coming. A Marchetti soldier got through, cornering Dominic in the study where Clara had been standing moments before. Clara screamed, pounding on the steel door until her fists hurt as the man raised his gun, finger tightening on the trigger. Dominic was faster. One fluid motion and the soldier dropped, dead before he hit the ground. The battle took 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. When the gunfire finally stopped, when the smoke cleared, Clara burst from the panic room with her medical bag clutched in shaking hands. Bodies littered the hallways, blood soaking into expensive carpets. She found Dominic in the entry hall, blood, not all his own, splattered across his clothes. He turned when she ran in, surprise and something like relief flickering across his face. You're hurt. Clara was already reaching for him, checking for wounds with hands that trembled but didn't stop. Let me see. Let me help. Clara, you should have run. Shut up and let me work. Graze wound on his shoulder, nothing serious. She cleaned it efficiently, bandaged it, her training overriding her fear. But as she worked, Dominic caught her wrist, stilling her movements. You could have run. The panic room has an emergency exit to the lake. There's a boat, supplies, everything you'd need. You could have been gone, could have been free. I know. Then why didn't you? Why are you here? Clara looked up at him, finally understanding the truth she'd been running from. Because I'd rather be terrified and alive with you than safe and dead inside without you. Because somewhere between you bleeding on my floor and you holding me while I cried, I fell in love with you. And that's insane, and it's probably going to get me killed, but I don't care anymore. Dominic's expression cracked open, showing vulnerability she hadn't known he was capable of. He pulled her close, forehead resting against hers, his hands cradling her face like she was made of glass. Clara Bennett, you're going to destroy me. Good, maybe we'll destroy each other. Maybe that's what we both need. He kissed her then, desperate and claiming and alive in a way that made her nerve endings sing. Clara kissed him back, tasting blood and smoke and the promise of something she'd thought died with Lily. Hope, purpose, a reason to keep breathing. That night, after the bodies were cleared and the estate secured, after the police were paid off and the witnesses silenced, Clara stood at Dominic's bedroom window watching stars reflect on Lake Michigan. Dominic's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck. "Stay with me," he murmured, the words a plea and a prayer. "I'll protect you, give you everything, money, safety, anything you want." "I don't want everything." Clara turned in his arms, meeting his eyes. "I just want this, you real, honest, no more lies, no more secrets. Even knowing what I am, what I do. Especially knowing what you are. You don't hide from me, Dominic. You don't pretend to be something you're not. That's more honest than most people ever manage." His phone buzzed, cutting through the moment. Dominic checked it, and Clara watched his entire body go rigid. He showed her the screen without a word. A photo, Clara's apartment. But this time, there was someone sitting on her couch, face partially visible in the dim light. A woman. A woman with Clara's eyes and a smile Clara would recognize anywhere, even after 18 months of grief. "Lily." Clara's hands went numb. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering on the floor. "That's impossible. Lily died. I was there. I held her hand while she died. I watched them turn off the machines. I buried her." "Maybe you buried someone else." Dominic's voice was deadly quiet, controlled in a way that promised violence. "The Marchetti family specializes in making people disappear, in creating leverage they can use later. They're experts at faking deaths, at manipulating records." The phone buzzed again. Another message, this one written in block letters that seemed to scream off the screen. "Your sister says hello from her cage. She's been our guest for 18 months. She asks about you every day. Wants to know why you gave up looking for her. Come alone to the warehouse on Cicero Avenue or she dies. For real this time. You have 24 hours. Come alone or we start mailing her back to you in pieces." Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Lily was alive. Alive. Everything she'd grieved, every tear she'd finally cried, every moment of crushing guilt, all built on a lie. Her sister had been alive this whole time, suffering, waiting, wondering why Clara had abandoned her. "It's a trap." Dominic's jaw was set, his eyes calculating. "They want you to go there alone. They want to use you to get to me. This is exactly what I warned you about." "I don't care if it's a trap." Clara's voice broke on the words. "She's my sister. She's alive. Nothing else matters." "Clara, listen to me." She grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her, forcing him to see the desperate determination in her eyes. "If you love me, if any of this is real, you'll help me get her back. I will go to that warehouse with or without you. I will walk into whatever trap they've set, but I'd rather walk in with you beside me." Dominic's eyes searched hers, green and burning and full of something that looked like agony, like he was being torn in two. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he nodded once. "Then we go to war. We get your sister back, and we destroy everyone who ever thought they could use her against you." But as Clara turned back to the window, relief and terror warring in her chest, she didn't see Dominic pull out a second phone from his pocket. Didn't see him type a message with quick, efficient movements. She knows about the sister. Proceed with phase 2 exactly as planned. The response came immediately. "Understood, Mr. Valenti. The girl will be moved to the secondary location within the hour. Miss Bennett will never find her. The trap is set." Dominic looked at Clara's reflection in the window. The woman he'd grown to need more than air, more than revenge, more than the empire he'd built from blood and bones. The woman who'd saved his life and stolen his heart in the process. The woman he was about to betray in the worst way possible. Because Lily Bennett wasn't being held by the Marchetti family. She'd never been held by the Marchetti family. She was being held by Dominic Valenti. She'd been his prisoner from the very beginning, locked in a comfortable room in one of his safe houses, kept alive and healthy and completely unaware that her sister thought she was dead. Clara had just walked into the one trap Dominic had spent 18 months carefully, meticulously building. And tomorrow, when she realized the truth, when she understood the depth of his deception, she would hate him with the same intensity she currently loved him. But Dominic would finally have what he needed, the one piece of leverage that would force Clara to stay with him forever, that would bind her to him in ways love never could. Because Dominic Valenti didn't believe in love. He believed in control, in possession, in making sure the people he needed could never, ever leave. And Clara Bennett had just become the one person he needed more than his next breath. What is Dominic's real plan? Will Clara discover his betrayal before it's too late? Can Lily truly be alive after 18 months? Drop a comment right now telling me what you think happens next. Should Clara forgive Dominic when she learns the truth, or should she destroy him the way he's about to destroy her? And smash that subscribe button if you want part 2, because this story is just getting started and the next part will blow your mind. Like this video if you're absolutely shook by that ending. Leave a comment with your theories. Subscribe for part 2 where everything burns. See you in the next one, where everything Clara thought she knew turns to ashes, and the man she loves becomes the monster she should have feared all along.